Bryan Fischer here with D1 Ticker and D1 Extra. Happy to be joined now by Kyle Rowland of the Toledo Blade, because it looks like Toledo's search to replace Mike O'Brien is coming down to its final legs. Thanks for joining us, Kyle.
Absolutely.
Now, you wrote about the three finalists that were involved in this search, and I'm curious if you can kind of give us a high-level overview of who they are and who the school is really considering to replace their longtime AD.
Yeah, Austin Peay AD, Gerald Harrison, Washington State Deputy AD, Blair, and Purdue Associate AD, Tom Moreland are the three finalists. They all came to Toledo this week. They all met with members of the search committee, university leaders, some of the head coaches at Toledo, just everyone trying to, kind of gauge, what each individual is interested in, what they kind of want to do at Toledo, what the whole kind of big picture image is. And then it seems imminent, early next week, a decision will probably be made. I think there are some interesting similarities with all three candidates. The very obvious one is fundraising. All three have a very deep background in that and a successful job of raising, large sums of money for the universities they work for. They've been involved in facilities upgrades, kind of revenue generation. I think all three have been heavily involved in football programs throughout their career, which we all know in the world of FBS, football is kind of the cash cow and the major thing on every campus. So that's an important element, obviously, that the search committee thought, and all three have it. So it'll be interesting to kind of see, where it leads and whoever they pick, kind of, what their thoughts were on why they wanted the Toledo job.
Mike O'Brien announced his retirement way back in last January. So it's taken a while for the school to kind of get through this search process. Was there anything that kind of surprised you about, number one, how long it's taken, but also, kind of how the school has approached replacing, a guy that's been in the job for 2 decades?
Yeah, well, I mean, the length has surprised me. I mean, maybe some in the college athletic space it hasn't surprised, but I mean, they've had 13 months to do this. They set this February 14th deadline, and they're basically going to go right up to it. I guess, I mean, it seems like you could have made this decision quicker. At the same time, I don't know if it'd be awkward to have such a significant overlap. Say, someone was hired in December. I mean, Mike O'Brien's last day is April 30th. He is on the NCAA basketball selection committee, which will clearly occupy a lot of his time from here until his end date. But I mean, I think the length has been a little interesting. Other than that, I mean, the search, I mean, they number one, did a very good job of keeping things quiet, which is important, I think, in a lot of searches. I mean, obviously in the media, we like to know everything that's going on, but there are times where it is nice to kind of keep things under wraps. So I do give them credit for that. But I haven't heard a whole lot of bad things about it. The committee had some pretty, highly thought of people on it. It seems like they did a pretty, rigorous job and have three really solid candidates. I don't think any of them would be a bad selection for Toledo.
It's interesting. Gerald Harrison, the Austin PAD, is the only sitting, candidate who has, AD experience. I'm curious. He's worked at Duke and obviously been a big part of their success way back when they were going to bowls under David Cutcliffe. He worked at Tennessee under Phil Fulmer. Does that maybe kind of enhance his candidacy a little bit more compared to the others, given that he kind of knows the rigors of the job, and he's been very successful in terms of the fundraising that they've done, some of the partnerships they've done in the community there in Nashville?
Yeah, I mean, his resume is certainly very impressive. As you mentioned, I think the football background, which I talked about earlier, is a big thing. Toledo wants to be consistently really good at football. Seems like Gerald Harrison has his, a handle on how that can be done. Austin Peay's done some unique things with the Sabretooth entertainment with the Nashville Predators that probably, kind of speak well to Harrison. Their football program has had some good years here recently when they don't have a whole lot of historical success. There have always been questions about, does Toledo have ambitions beyond the MAC conference? It's always kind of, behind the scenes, something talked about in the city of Toledo. And obviously he's kind of spearheaded Austin Peay's movement out of the Ohio Valley into the ASUN. So perhaps that's part of the equation as well.
Bryan Blair, another candidate coming from out west, obviously a bit of a different geographical sense, but former Wofford football player, so he obviously has those ties. Been in the South as well. I'm curious, does that kind of diversity of geographic experience almost help in a position like Toledo, or is it just kind of something on the resume for somebody like him?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I don't think it's some huge positive or negative either way. I think his resume kind of speaks for itself. I mean, he's a very impressive individual. I heard his interview went excellent. He kind of hit it out of the park. A lot of people were impressed by him. He's done some pretty big time things at Washington State, which does not have the resources of a lot of the Power 5 schools. I mean, some would say maybe they're a bigger disadvantage than any other Power 5 university. And he's managed to raise a whole lot of money and do a lot of really good things for Washington State. There've been some kind of on the media side as well, I think things that kind of have gone well at Wazzu. So I definitely think he's right there near the top of the list, obviously, among these finalists.
And Tom Moreland, the other finalist, obviously a former Iowa baseball player, has some connections certainly to the Midwest and done a lot of good things in terms of what he's, in terms of fundraising at Purdue. I'm curious how his candidate profile kind of differs from the other two, given that he's a bit younger, obviously a little bit less experience in terms of diversity of places, but it seems like he's somebody that can definitely come in and raise a lot of money for the Rockets there.
Yeah, I mean, I think his age, perhaps it's a negative, some people would say, but I kind of look at it as a positive that he's this young and he's a finalist for a job the caliber of, a Division I AD at Toledo, which is a very solid job. The things that he did at Iowa and Purdue, I think are incredibly impressive, especially considering his age and, relative lack of experience, I guess, when you talk about the other guys, especially Gerald Harrison. Just gobs and gobs of money. The Purdue football has, increased attendance significantly. I know part of that obviously is related to the on-field product, but they've done really nice enhancements at Ross-Ade Stadium, which Moreland's been a part of, and kind of, bettered the fan experience, or however you want to describe that. I really think he's an impressive guy, and whether he gets this job or not, he's going to be someone to keep your eye on for years to come. Seems like he has a very, very bright future in athletic administration.
Absolutely. And look, all three of them known for their fundraising. What does that say about Toledo's kind of ambitions and where they are in terms of replacing Mike O'Brien and where they want to go from here?
Yeah, that's kind of the name of the game. Toledo is in a big city and they do have a lot of support in town and they get corporate support and stuff. But I don't know. I feel like people, they need to raise more money. There's certain facility projects that I think are needed. They need someone maybe a little younger and ambitious who's going to come in here and, kind of change things up, get the local community more engaged. And I guess I can't overstate how much that fundraising is going to be a huge part of this decision. And that kind of shows in these guys' resumes.
Outside of raising money, when these guys, one of them walks into the job, what is kind of at the top of their to-do list? Besides, obviously the capital improvement, some of those facilities things, what is kind of at the top of the list that they need to consider and need to focus on basically from day one?
Well, I think one of the biggest questions is going to be the contract status of the men's basketball coach, Todd Kowalczyk, and football coach, Jason Candle. They've both only got a couple years left. Basketball team right now is having a very successful season. Are these guys going to get extensions, very quickly or not? I think an intriguing thing that I'll throw out there is could the naming rights for the Glass Bowl, something like that, be, in the future? It's a kind of an iconic group of 5 stadium way to generate money, generate excitement. I think that's an interesting project. I know football doesn't have an outdoor dedicated practice field. That's something that I think is going to be there's other facilities things. But there'd certainly be a big to-do list, but I think they'd be stepping into a very good job and one that certainly is coveted in the group of 5 teams.
Absolutely. And look, it is a period of transition for a lot of programs out there, not just in terms of the football side, but in terms of all of Division One. And I'm curious, in terms of the challenges that Toledo is going to face coming up with possibly some reorganization of Division One and some tweaks to how you remain kind of a member of FBS. I'm curious is that kind of in the back of everybody's mind in terms of how Toledo can kind of navigate through a lot of these upcoming changes at the NCAA level?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that. I mean, obviously, we more and more we see like a splintering of Group of Five, Power Five. They're kind of going their separate ways, and it's getting harder and harder. But I still think, as an athletic department, Toledo is very well positioned. They have a lot of success, a lot of tradition. They've got as good a resources as everyone in the MAC. I think getting someone new in there, maybe that generates excitement, and we talk about the fundraising element, and they'll have a push for that. But I just think that Toledo is well positioned. It helps that they're in a bigger city than some of these other schools. So it'll definitely be something to keep an eye on here in the future.
It'll be something to keep an eye on for sure, and as well as that announcement that will hopefully be forthcoming very shortly. Thanks for joining us, Kyle.
Thank you.